building still had a banner on the side of it. Not a crime scene banner. A marketing banner. The kind developers hang when units are still being leased, when the paint is barely dry, when the hallways still smell like fresh concrete. The 113 complex on Commercial Road in Teneriffe, Brisbane, had only opened earlier that year. Paper signs were still taped to the walls, directing residents to their own doors. People had paid significant money to live here. They expected a certain kind of neighbor. What they got was Marcus and Mayang. To anyone who passed them in the courtyard, they looked unremarkable. A young couple in their late 20s. He was tall, quiet, the kind of man who knew the difference between a stock and a broth and could tell you why it mattered. His colleagues said he was someone you wanted on your shift. She was striking, beautiful, 27 years old, from Indonesia, sending money home every month to a family who had no idea what it cost her. They had moved in 3 weeks earlier. They had barely introduced themselves to anyone. There was nothing about them that demanded a second look. That is almost always how it begins. Behind the door of Unit 5, something had already ended. The building just didn't know it yet. On the night of October 4th, 2014, 2 police officers responded to a welfare check at 113 Commercial Road. A building manager had called. There was a smell she could not account for. When Senior Constable Brian Reed and Constable Liam McWhinney reached the door, they paused. The smell was strong, but it was not what they expected. It did not smell like death. It smelled like something cooking. They knocked. A man answered, calm, cooperative. He asked if he could go back inside to secure the dogs. They agreed. That was the last moment this case resembled anything ordinary. Stay until the end. There is a phone call documented in the inquest, made the afternoon before Mayang died. She rang Marcus while he was with a client. The client told police what happened the moment Marcus heard her voice. It is one of the most revealing details in the entire record. Bandar Lampung sits at the southern tip of Sumatra, a port city of 3 million people, pressed between volcanic hills and the Sunda Strait, where the air smells of salt and diesel and the markets open before the sun is fully up. It is the kind of place people leave when they have something to become. Febri Andriansyah left. She chose a new name, Mayang, after the Indonesian singer Mayang Sari, whose voice carried a particular quality of longing that Febri had always recognized in herself. Her mother would later say the surname Prasetyo came from someone Mayang had once loved. She had taken a new name, built a new life, and reconstructed herself as completely as the world would allow. On paper, the name Febri still existed. In every other sense, it did not. What she had not yet built was safety. The money she made as an escort in Melbourne went almost entirely to Lampung. Her mother's living expenses, school fees for her 2 younger sisters, every transfer was a promise that the life she was living, the things she was doing to survive it, were in service of something larger than herself. She sent the money without explanation. Her family accepted it without question. 7,000 miles away, in a farming town outside Ballarat, a young man was building a version of himself that the people who raised him would not have recognized. Marcus Peter Volke grew up in Haddon Flatland, cold winters. The kind of quiet that either settles into you or pushes you out. He went to Ballarat High School, trained at the Damashi Dojo, studied to be a chef. He was contained. Disciplined, friends remembered someone who had mapped out a future and was quietly working toward it. His plan, documented in emails later tendered at the inquest, was to one day become a dog breeder. That was the version of Marcus Volke that existed before the credit card statements caught up with him. To pay off $9,000 in debt, Volke began working as a male escort. It was inside Melbourne's escort scene that he met Mayang Prasetyo. The inquest would later describe their relationship as a business arrangement. She helped him earn. He helped her stay. On the 1st of August 2013, they married in Denmark. His mother, Dorothy, had no idea her son was married. His family thought he was working on cruise ships as a chef. Mayang's mother thought the same. On Facebook, the couple posted that they had married in Amsterdam. Both families held a version of these two people that neither Marcus nor Mayang had ever corrected. On the 13th of September 2014, they signed a lease and moved into a ground floor, one-bedroom unit at 1 and 13 Commercial Road, Teneriffe, a courtyard for the dogs. New neighbors who hadn't learned their names, a building so new, the signs on the walls were still printed on paper. 19 days later, on the night of October 2nd, the people in the neighboring apartment heard something that would stay with them for years. At 11:30 that night, the argument began. It lasted between 30 and 40 minutes. They heard a woman's voice, sharp, escalating, the words, "Fuck you," the words, "I can't believe you," then quiet. Then, at around 1:30 in the morning, it started again, shorter, lower, and then silence. What happened in that silence is not fully known. The inquest could not establish the precise sequence of events inside Unit 5 between 1:30 and dawn. At some point that night, Marcus Volke sustained a large laceration to his right hand. He did not call for help. He waited. The next morning, October 3rd, the building manager noticed a smell coming from Unit 5, strong enough that air freshener was used in the hallway outside. Volke did not emerge. That same afternoon, Mayang rang him. He was with a client. The client heard her screaming on the other end of the line. Then they watched Marcus Volke change. The warmth in his voice disappeared. What replaced it, the client told police, was something stilted, clinical, as though a different person had picked up the phone. The conversation ended. Volke said his flatmate needed help with the dogs. Then he left, as though the call had not happened at all. At 6 o'clock that evening, Volke left the apartment. He went to Woolworths at Newstead. The items he purchased, confirmed by the inquest from receipts and CCTV, were cleaning supplies, bleach, gloves, garbage bags, a scrubbing brush, wipes, a laundry tub. From the supermarket, he took a taxi to the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. He told the driver he had cut his hand chopping onions. He told the hospital a different story, that he had tried to take a knife from his girlfriend during an argument. The doctor treated the wound. Volke left. The inquest confirmed that Mayang Prasetyo died on October 3, 2014. She was 27 years old. The cause of death was a stab wound to the front of the neck. The inquest could not determine the precise moment she died. What it established was that by the time Volke left for the supermarket, she was dead. What followed was methodical. The script will not linger here. What is documented is the outcome. Mayang's body was dismembered. A stock pot was placed on the stove. The inquest noted there was no evidence of prior planning. And yet the sequence, the waiting, the two different stories told to two different people on the same ride, does not read like a man who had lost his mind. The inquest did not say he planned it, but the inquest could not say otherwise either. On the afternoon of October 4th at 12:15, Volke purchased a meat cleaver from Big W and returned to the apartment. That afternoon, The stock pot boiled over. Liquid reached the element. The power went out. Marcus Volke was alone in that apartment with no electricity, and he needed help he could not explain. He called a 24-hour electrician. Bradley Coyne arrived at 113 Commercial Road on the evening of October 4th. A power outage in a ground-floor unit. The man who met him in the foyer was calm, polite. He said he had left a pot of stock on and gone out. It had boiled over and shorted the circuit. Plausible enough. The smell hit Coyne before the door opened. Pungent, putrid, a bit like dog food. Volke had an explanation for that, too. Pig's broth. Coyne noticed the bandaged hand. Volke said his ex-girlfriend had attacked him with a knife. Coyne noted the blood on the carpet, the bleach, the cleaning products by the door. He fixed the circuit. He left. But he made a call first. Debrina Hughes, the building manager, now had 2 reports in one day. Her own that morning and Coyne's. She went to the apartment. Volke tried to stop her at the door, saying she needed to give him 7 days' notice. Hughes told him the electrical fault was a safety issue. She had the right to enter. She walked in. Blood on the carpet, cleaning products, damage she could not account for. She had not seen Mayang in days. She called police. Senior Constable Brian Reed and Constable Liam McWhinney attended at approximately 9 o'clock. The smell met them in the hallway. Not death, but something cooking, something that didn't resolve. Reed knocked. Volke answered. He was calm. When officers noticed the wound on his wrist, he said his girlfriend had done it. They asked about Mayang. He answered. Then he asked to go back inside to secure the dogs. They agreed. He went inside. He locked the door. And then he was gone, out through a rear exit, into the dark. By the time officers realized, there was nothing but a blood trail on the pavement. Police and the dog squad searched the surrounding streets. Senior Constable Robert Richardson arrived with police dog Zuma. Zuma tracked the scent down Dath Street toward Vernon Terrace and into an underground car park beneath a commercial building. Inside were a number of large bins. Zuma indicated toward one. Marcus Volke was inside. His wrists were slashed. His throat was cut. CPR was attempted. It was not enough. He was 27 years old. Inside Unit 5, Senior Constable Reed found what he would later say he would never forget. Mayang Prasetyo's feet were visible in the stock pot on the kitchen floor next to a pool of blood. Further remains were in a black garbage bag in the washing machine. 2 investigations were opened. Detective Sergeant Jack Savage handled Mayang's case. Detective Sergeant Joshua Walsh handled Volke's. What they needed to establish, without a living suspect, was why. The medical records came first. 2 weeks before the deaths, Volke had seen a doctor for anxiety, depression, and a sleep disorder. Further back, police found records showing he had sought treatment at Ballarat Base Hospital at 16. Not a history of violence. A history of a man whose interior life had been in distress for a long time. The financial records came next. $9,000 in credit card debt. Escort listings still live in Melbourne directories. An email to a dog breeder asking about available litters. A marriage certificate from Denmark his mother had never seen. The inquest heard that Mayang had, on prior occasions, threatened to expose Volke's secret life if he tried to leave. His mother did not know he was married. His family did not know about the escort work. Exposure meant the collapse of every version of himself he had shown to the people who loved him. Whether that threat was made again on the night of October 2nd, the inquest could not establish. There was no surviving witness. There was no recording. There is only the argument the neighbors heard, the silence that followed, and what was found the next day. Two readings of this case exist. Those who see Mayang's documented threats as context, not excuse, but context, for what happened, and those who argue that whatever leverage she held, it was the only protection she had in a relationship where she was the more vulnerable person. Both are supported by the record. Neither resolves cleanly. On the afternoon of October 2nd, the same afternoon Mayang rang Marcus while he was with a client. She had been seen by neighbors moving through the building. She seemed fine. Ordinary, present. She was a 27-year-old woman moving through a Thursday afternoon with no reason to believe it would be her last. That does not fit the version of this story where Mayang was only a threat. It fits a different version, one where she was simply there, still alive in every sense, hours before she wasn't. The doctor's appointment 2 weeks earlier tells its own story. Volke described anxiety, depression, a sleep disorder. He said nothing about the marriage, the debt, the double life, or the threats. He sought help and concealed the thing he needed help with. The formal conclusion of the inquest was this: Marcus Peter Volke killed Mayang Prasetyo. He died by suicide while evading police custody. State Coroner Terry Ryan found no evidence that any police officer contributed to his death. The findings were handed down on the 19th of May, 2017. No one was charged. There was no trial, no cross-examination, no verdict returned in Mayang's name. There was only the inquest and the picture it built from receipts, medical records, and a witness statement from an electrician who almost said nothing. The picture pointed toward a man who had spent years maintaining a version of himself that could not survive contact with the truth. And the person who held the truth, who had always held it, who had built her own survival around it, was Mayang. Understanding why this ended the way it did requires going back further than Melbourne, further than the debt or the visa or the threats. It requires going back to Haddon. Everyone who knew Marcus Volke in Haddon remembered the same thing. He was controlled, disciplined. Whatever was happening inside him seemed managed. Not a problem for anyone else. The records told a different story. At 16, he sought treatment at Ballarat Base Hospital for mental health issues. In January 2006, aged approximately 19, he overdosed on paracetamol. In June 2007, he was referred to Ballarat Psychiatric Services for anxiety and depressive features. And 2 weeks before October 3rd, he sat in a consulting room in Newstead, described anxiety, depression, a sleep disorder, and said nothing about the marriage, the debt, the double life. He had been doing this for years, not hiding in the obvious sense. Registering his wife as his flatmate on a medical form, telling a client his flatmate needed help with the dogs, performing the absence of anything worth hiding. Psychologists call this shame-based identity concealment, the construction of a public self so complete that the private self becomes structurally incompatible with it. The two cannot coexist in the open. They can only coexist in secret. And the secret requires, above all, that no one who knows the public self ever encounters the private one. Mayang knew both. That was the architecture of the danger she was in. Not because he was violent by every prior account, he was not, but because she was the only person alive who had seen both versions of Marcus Volke, and she had made clear she would use that knowledge if she needed to. The inquest confirmed she had threatened to expose him before. Whether it was leverage or her only door people who have studied this case still disagree. Both arguments have evidence behind them. In the days before her death, Mayang spoke to her mother, Mayang Prasetyo, by phone. She was restless. Agitated, her mother noticed but did not understand why. So Mayang from Lampung 7,000 miles away, with no idea what was happening, told her daughter to keep the peace. Don't fight with him, let it go. 3 days later, Mayang Prasetyo found out what had happened through the media. Her first concern was not how or why. It was whether her child's remains could come home. There was no trial. No moment in a courtroom where Mayang's name was spoken by a prosecutor. No verdict returned in her name. The inquest, concluded on the 19th of May 2017, was the closest thing to an official accounting this case ever produced. State Coroner Terry Ryan presided. The findings were drawn from fragments, receipts, medical records, witness statements, a blood trail through the streets of Teneriffe. Mayang's remains were repatriated to Bandar Lampung. She was returned to the family she had spent years supporting from the other side of the world. Her 2 younger sisters, whose school fees she had paid from Melbourne, grew up without her. Dorothy Volke, Marcus's mother, told reporters she had no indication anything was wrong. She never got to ask him why. The Queensland Government's Domestic Violence Prevention Strategy 2016 to 2026 specifically named Mayang Prasetyo's death as a reminder of the particular vulnerabilities faced by transgender people in situations of domestic violence and the barriers that prevent those situations from, ever, being seen in time. The 113 building still stands at 113 Commercial Road, Teneriffe. The banner came down eventually. Mayang Prasetyo was a transgender woman in a country that was not her own, in a relationship the inquest called a business transaction. Her only leverage was a secret she could not safely keep and could not safely put down. She fell through every gap a system might have caught her in. The inquest noted it. The government named it. Nothing changed in time to matter for her. The question this case leaves is not what she should have done differently. The question is what we do with the knowledge that she couldn't. If this story moved you, give it a like, share it to raise awareness, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to follow more real-life true crime cases.